You're listening to Street Life, a podcast about street photography with John ST and Mark Davidson.
You're listening to Street Life. I'm Mark Davidson, a street photographer from Melbourne, Australia. And with me, as always, my mate, Mr. John Street. Hang on, that's not right, is it? Sorry, Mr. John ST, how you doing?
Wow, it makes a change. Someone else fucking up, Mark. That's brilliant. Normally it's me.
Well, you should go with
great,
it.
mate. How are you doing?
John Street's a really apt nickname, isn't it? I think you should own it.
Yeah, that's what it stands for.
Does it?
Yeah, ST short for street, mate.
Oh, sorry. I've just found this out about you. I thought it was initialism. Okay, righto. Well, I've been saying John ST this whole time.
It is John ST, but people think it's John Street, so it's all good.
Hey,
you can call me John ST, John Street. You can call me that shithead on the street corner. It's up to you.
John
I respond to everything.
Oh, boy. How you been, mate? Well, I'll tell you what. We were just featured together in a magazine, in a zine, which was pretty amazing. Came out a week or two ago, didn't it?
It did. Progressive Street. Yes.
Pretty exciting.
It was. It was nice to see you in there as well, Mark, and a few others. Julia was in there.
Renata Philippi,
awesome.
Zone
Yes.
Focus, Steve.
Yes.
It was great. It's fantastic.
I think there was quite a large proportion of Melbourne street photographers in that, wasn't there?
Was an Aussie themed progressive
It was.
street zine. So
I didn't count, but I think it was pretty fair.
yeah. And
Yeah.
Sally Coggle. No, it was fantastic. So if people want to check it out, I think it's progressive-street.com, I think is the address. So go check that out. It's lovely to collab with you in that way. I know we didn't put it together, but it came out really nicely.
It did. I was quite surprised because I wasn't expecting all of those people to be in it, because when they contacted me, look, I've known them for quite some time, and they've supported me right at the beginning of my journey because I've always posted on their Facebook group when they first started. They're a really nice group of people. And and they contacted me and said, do you want to be part of the Australia thing? And I'm like, yeah, sure. But they never mentioned who was going to be in it.
Right.
So I was like, oh, no idea. And they said, we need some images and a bit of a write-up about your story. And I think I wrote a bit of a monologue. Yours was quite short, Mark.
It was. Yours was War and Peace. Mine was sort of a little poem.
Yours was like 2 paragraphs and mine was like 3 hours later.
Oh,
you know,
I know.
it was my whole life story.
I sort of felt bad a little bit because, I know it's not an excuse, but I had been busy with work. It was the start of the year with radio and the ratings and everything. And then, I kind of just sort of rushed that out and gave it back to them. And yeah, you're right. Yours was amazing, and mine looked pretty awful in comparison.
Well, Mark, I'd rather be known as being a great photographer who's won lots of competitions than a guy who can write a little shitty article and stick some images in it. You know what I mean? So well done, you. Doesn't matter. Your images speak louder than words, Mark.
Well,
so well done, and well done everybody else. It was a very strong selection of photos in that zine.
Yeah. Well, look, I haven't really been entering many competitions of late because I know we had that conversation a little while ago. I actually there was a competition where I didn't get anywhere. They discarded me like a used tissue, just threw me on the floor and just said, never enter again. Your work is horrible. And if you enter again, I'll stamp on it I'll spurn you like a rabid dog. Your work is awful and don't enter this competition ever again.
Is that what they actually said, or is that what you thought, Mark?
That's what I thought.
It could have been worse. They're going to say, we're going to use the images you sent through as toilet roll.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to use it to wipe our derrieres, flush it down the loo. Oh, Mark, I'll get the Lifeline number for you. Just a sec. There you go, Lifeline.
Thank you, John.
Send it to you. There you go, mate. You have a bit of a cry to them, Welcome to the real world, Mark, where people get knockbacks.
Yeah, that's cool,
What competition was it, Mark? Go on, name and shame.
It was one in Europe, so yeah.
Was it?
International.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What part of Europe was it, Mark?
A very nice part of Europe, a very beautiful country. I've been there once or twice. I think you may have been there. It's beautiful, lovely people, lovely food. And they don't want my shit there. So
that narrows it down to about 25 countries in Europe, Mark. Come on, just name the country for the Lord. Come on.
I think...
What country?
You know.
I don't know.
You can guess.
What? Is it France?
No.
Germany?
Yeah.
No.
Well,
Germany.
one of them.
Really?
One of them. Yeah.
Oh.
Anyway, it's fine. I don't care.
Oh, mate, that's awful. You didn't get anywhere. I'm shocked. I really am. Oh, bless your cotton socks.
Anyway.
I never thought I'd hear these words, Mark. I've been knocked back.
Happens all the time. Look, you got to take the rough with the smooth.
You do, Mark. And people don't often share their. We're not going to call it a failure, are we, Mark?
We are. Yeah, we are. It's
No, the knockback. Not people will tell. Most people won't tell you. But I think it's important that people know that even people like yourself.
What do you mean, people like myself?
Well, you've won lots of big competitions, Mark.
Not really.
Come on. Don't undersell. Look, I don't want to turn this podcast into a
therapy
Mark
session
on a pedestal. Play up to his ego, fan that ego. You have won some very highly regarded competitions. Aussie Street was one of them.
Well, Aussie Street, yeah, that was I was really happy with that because, in Australia, that's the premier, street photography exhibition competition here. And they do an amazing job, that team, and I was really happy to win that and super stoked. But you've
won emerging black and white photographer.
Yeah, I did. But I think you're right. You do get some knockbacks, which is great. I think you need that.
It's important because it keeps you grounded.
It does keep you grounded, definitely. And look, at the end of the day, you should just be going out and taking photos. And now I'm sort of working on long-term projects and not really worrying about entering single image shots and stuff like that. But I threw some stuff into this European one, and they said, "No fucking way."
Really? Oh no! What sort of stuff did you put in, Mark? Was it experimental, or was it your normally high-profile type images that we know that you're good for? Or
yeah, it looks a lot of stuff that I haven't shared on social media yet because I'm sort of I've been shooting a lot, not posting a lot, as you know.
I'm going to ask you a question because I think it's important when you said this is new stuff that you've submitted that you've not shown anybody. Did you sort of have did it give you a little bit of an inkling of doubt that you think, oh, man, maybe my new stuff isn't as good as my old stuff? Thanks, Regurgitator.
Good song. Fun fact. I was in a band in 1999 and we won Battle of the Bands in Ballarat and our prize was to play with Regurgitator. So
really? Yeah, there you go.
Anyway.
There you go. That was a bit of little trivia for people.
A little trivia fact there. Yeah. But no, do you know what?
Did it make you think?
Do you know what? I don't want to sound like a wanker. I hope it doesn't come across as that, but I think no, because I actually really like the stuff that I submitted, and I really like those images. I really think that I'm going to use them in the future for something, and no, it doesn't make me second guess myself or those photos at all. Not a bit. Which is, yeah, I think you shoot for yourself at the end of the day, and it doesn't matter if anyone else likes your work as long as you're happy with it. I think that's what you're striving for.
Right answer, Mark. Right answer, because it doesn't matter. It's just a competition.
Of course.
So a group of people, a very small minority of people who were judging, didn't think your images were good enough for the competition. They've got their own ideas of what they want the competition to be and what the images they want. So it doesn't really matter. I think you're bang on the money. I'm glad that it didn't, because it can put people in a spiral.
Yeah.
I know when I first started and I thought, oh, people told me to put my images in a competition and I got knocked back. It can knock your confidence a bit, especially if you're not sure about what you're doing. It's good that hasn't happened to you. And especially if you're trying something different or you're going down a different path and you're not doing what you used to do, then, I think it's very, very normal to think, oh, maybe shall I go back to what I used to win, what I used to win with.
But it'd be
because it's easy.
No, it's not easy. And it'd be pretty arrogant to just submit work and think, I'm going to, get a finalist place in this. And I think our guest shares some of these opinions with me because I've spoken to him about it before. When you enter these competitions, getting a finalist place is actually a win, I think. You don't have to win first or second place or third or whatever. If you make the finals, I think that's an achievement in itself. And everything in the art world and photography world is subjective. And I think that, if you get knocked back from some of these stuff, I think it's a good thing. and you just got to keep going and believe in yourself and take photos for yourself and go out and shoot more and more and try and better yourself all the time and not worry about what other people think of your stuff.
And to be fair, there's some great up and coming new photographers that are coming through who are just starting and they've hit the ground running. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're not some of these people they got some confidence because they're entering competitions and they're getting chosen and becoming finalists, and they haven't been around for so kudos to them. That's great.
Yeah.
But the competition's getting stronger. I can see it in the images. When Instagram lets you can see the quality of the work that people are producing now, and it's far better than when I first started 5 years ago. It's like, wow.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's like,
Spot on.
It's tip top. But you've also just been at a photo festival type thing, weren't you? Where you had that bestseller that you were flogging there. What was that?
That's right. Yeah, Photo 2024. We had an photo book art fair, and we had a stand there, which is great. We just released a zine. Thank you so much to everyone who's bought it. I know a lot of our listeners will have bought our zine, and it means the world to us. Renata, my friend, and I did this zine together. It was the first time that I've ever published something like that, and I think it came up really well. It was a great process to go through. Sally Coggle, who put it all together, just made the process an absolute breeze. She killed it. And we've been selling it off $20. I think it's a pretty good price, for a bit of a zine. And we sold a fair few at this art fair, and it was great to just talk to people, talk to everyone at the art fair about photography and this medium that we love. And it was a really good thing to do. So I loved it.
$20 is a bargain. And even if you don't like it, it's cheaper than some toilet roll these days. You know what I mean?
So, just stick your coffee on it. It's fine. You can't buy a pack of coasters from Kmart for $20, so you might as well just get one of our zines. Rip the pages out.
Is it decoupage where you cut the photo out and then you glue? You can make a whole set of coasters. Just go, there you go, kids. Go to Kmart, get some cheap coasters and cut out Mark's image and decoupage it right over the top, and you'll have a wonderful, wonderful coaster to whack your tea on or whatever you want. That's great, mate. Awesome. So you sold most of them, have you?
Pretty much, yeah. We're pretty much sold out. Like, if anyone does want one, we do have a couple left, but it's we're pretty much sold out, which we were wrapped within in a couple of weeks. We've sold them all. So if you do want to get a copy, just DM me on Instagram. I can send you out a copy. But yeah, we've pretty much sold out. So get in quick if you do want one.
Have you got your hand bandaged up there, Mark? Is that from all the signing?
No, it's worth more if we don't sign it. Trust me.
That's awesome. I'm really glad that you managed to get that up and running, and well done having a good friend who can help you do it. Because I think putting together, you just pick your images and you go, yeah, they'll do. And then you go, there you go, I'll leave that with you.
Well, Renata was integral in sequencing the whole thing. Yeah, so Sally and Renata really did an amazing job there. So it's fantastic. And I hear your zine's sort of in the works as well. Maybe?
Oh yes, it's a collaboration of a few people. It's still going through. Yep. So I'm dipping my toe in the water. I'm doing a few things differently this year, Mark. So and I'm put my hand in. I thought, right, time to do a zine. But I didn't want to do it by myself, so I've got a couple of mates, and we're just going through the process now. But we don't have a fancy friend like you. We don't have anyone to ride on the coattails with, Mark, where we could just go, look, I'm an artist. I don't know how to publish. Here's my images. Just put them together and give me the final copy, and I'll sign off on it. Yeah, off you go. Tally ho.
Ta-ta.
I'm going to have team scones now.
No, you can sort that out pretty easy. Figure it out. You'll be fine. And if there's a group of you, you'll come up with a design and pick some images. That'd be great. Well, I'm waiting with bated breath.
Watch this space 2032.
No, you'll get it done. Speaking of 2032, this intro is going on.
It is. And our guest is getting rather tired. I can see him yawning. Yeah.
Come on, guys. All right. Well, John, you know what to do. Go and intro him.
Today we've got Dave Cossini. He's an award-winning photographer and filmmaker based in Newcastle, New South Wales, Australia. David specialises in long-form documentary projects and portraiture, and has won numerous awards for his work, including the HeadOn Portrait Award, the Art Handlers Award in 2023, the National Photographic Portrait Prize, and the Percival Photographic Prize. And he also dabbles in a little bit of street photography. Thank God, because that's why we've got him on, Mark.
Correct.
It gives me great pleasure to welcome Dave to the Street Life podcast. Thanks for joining us, David.
Thanks for the introduction, mate. I have to clear up one thing, though. I didn't win the National Photographic Portrait Prize. I'd love to, but I got the Art Handlers Award in that one. So I just want to clear that one up so people don't think I'm taking accolades that I don't deserve.
Dave, thank you so much for chatting to us. You're one of my favourite people to talk photography with. So why don't we just start right at the beginning? I know you picked up photography relatively late in life and you came to it via a pretty unconventional route. You know, you did things like rugby beforehand and a few other things. So tell us how you got into it.
Well, mate, it's all that life experience that's kind of helped me. I think it's one of the most important things with photography. But I've always been taking photos. So even when I was a teenager, I'd go out and we would have a great time on the weekends because I grew up in a place called Nelson Bay. It's kind of a small place, quite small-minded. You're pretty sheltered from the world. So there's not a lot to do. And we'd go out on the weekends and I'd take all the photos. And I think in a way, if you look at the photos I take now, I've not really changed. I'm still photographing people that are doing the same things as what we were doing when we were kids. But obviously life gets in the way. I went to live in Europe for, I think it was 11 years in total. 8 of those I was playing rugby. So I was very fortunate to get to see and experience cultures that I wouldn't have made. I tell you what, I'd probably be still living at home and never left home at mum's place if I hadn't have gone overseas. And it really changed who I was as a person. I came back to Australia. I started to play rugby back here, but by this time the passion had completely gone, and I found myself moving up to the Gold Coast to live and work up there because there was a lot of opportunity back then. I ended up having a pretty bad work accident about 5 years in, which required, for 2 lots of 3 months, I couldn't even put my foot on the ground. And so I had my foot up the whole time, wasn't allowed to do any kind of weight bearing. And then for the 3 months after that, I would have to learn how to walk again and try and build the muscle back up so that there wasn't going to be some kind of lopsidedness that was going to cause an accident. So that was pretty much 12 months of my life that I missed out on. Lost a relationship because of it, because it's not a lot of fun, I think, when you're a younger person to be with someone who can't really do anything or is not really able to even leave the house. Or I think I was reasonably okay, a positive through the whole thing, luckily, but still, it has an effect. Once that was all done and dusted, it took 6 years for that to be all done and completed. And at that stage, I did I'm lucky, I'm a very introspective person. So I kind of sat down and went through everything, and I thought, well, I've pretty much wasted 6 years of my life, minus the start of, the real estate, which was a big help, even in my photography. Before we got on this recording, we had a bit of a chat, and we were talking about different situations, and I said how I have certain things that I say, and I just changed them slightly to be genuine to the situation that I'm in. But how I learned that from, for example, and how to approach people, how to deal with people, how to deal with difficult people, I learned that through real estate. They used to do these things called scripts, and so you would sit there for 2 hours a week, sometimes 4 hours a week. You'd help the new people, and you'd sit there with these scripts. So when a real estate agent bothers you and hassles you and rings you up and they sound like they're really smooth, it's because they've been practicing what they're saying. And this kind of thing is very, very helpful in street photography when you're on the street. It's very helpful if you want to do documentary and you want to go and introduce yourself to people, because you don't want to be one of these people that's going around the street and they see someone, they go, oh, I like your hat or something like this, and try and take a photo, because it's so fake. It's not genuine. People aren't idiots. They know when you're not being genuine. They might be nice and they might smile and say, oh, that's okay, yeah, thanks. But they know their hat's not fantastic. It's not it's just some shitty hat they bought from somewhere for $20 or whatever. It's not the reason you really want to take their photo. It's because they're wearing their makeup's all smeared over their face and you think it's going to look good. Be honest about it. Tell them, hey, I noticed you got your makeup on your face like that. Can you tell me a little bit about what made you decide to come out like this today? Yeah, okay, great. I'm a photographer. I only pretty much photograph people that I find interesting. I find very interesting. Can I make your portrait? It's very, very rare they'll say no. if you treat them with respect.
So David, how do you describe your photography? Do you classify yourself as a documentarian, a portrait photographer, or a street photographer, or doesn't it really matter?
John, I don't particularly like when people ask, this is not against you, just like an example, but people will say, what type of photography do you do? Because for me, I don't want it to be definitively interpreted. If I had to say what kind of photography I do, I'd say I was a gonzo photographer. And I've noticed since I've been telling people this, they get a bit confused, obviously, because the most famous gonzo journalist was Hunter S. Thompson. So they think you're out taking drugs, you're doing all this crazy, exaggerated things. But it's more a style of photography that's without claims of objectivity, because I don't believe in objectivity in photography, in the process of photographing, in the process of editing and sequencing. So it often includes the photographer as part of the story, as a first-person narrative. So I also think it's pretty arrogant to assume that on every situation you're in, you're able to accurately portray someone else's story. It's basically, not pretending to be some kind of objective observer, trying to show what my experience is like being with the people and in the situations that I photograph. But this is a street podcast. So how did that all start? Everything I do starts in the street. So generally, wherever I am, whatever situation I'm in, I just go out with no plan. I just go on the streets, and I start out not talking to anyone, and I see where it leads me. If I'm in a certain place and I see something that really interests me, I'll go and approach someone, and I'll talk to them, and I'll ask to take their portrait. If that person's an interesting person and they've got a good story, I'll try and see if they're interested in spending a bit more time together. They have to like me as much as I like them. You can't spend a lot of time with people you can't get along with, even if you think they're going to make a great photo. So if I go out on a day, there's plenty of days I go out in countries where I can't speak their language and I don't find anyone particularly interesting or that, then it's a day of street photography. If I go somewhere and I'm doing street, so the punk project I did, for example, that just started out with me. I'd been doing 3 weeks of photography. No, it was 4 weeks of street photography in London, which was great. It was a great experience. And then the very last day before I left to come back home, I met these punks and I had a chat with them. And when I used to live in England, I always wanted to know what it was like to see I'd never been into a squat. So I asked them, I said, listen, if I bought you guys a box of beer, would you let me come back to the squat, maybe take some photos? Just you guys show me around and see. I want to see where you live. And they said, listen, we would do that, but in order to do something like that, we have to have these rules. So we've got 20 people in our squat, and we need everyone's permission to bring you back. But there's 4 people are away at a festival, and one person's gone to see their parents down south. So we can't take you back this time. I said, look, that's okay. Do you mind if I just continue to take a few more photos here? Because it was very difficult to photograph them, because sometimes when you point the camera at people, you can see how they feel about themselves. And these guys, they didn't feel real good about themselves. And when I found out their backstory, I understand why. There's a lot of shame. They had feelings of shame linked to their history. So I left anyway. I went back to England. A year, 2 years later, and I was doing the Magnum documentary course, and it was a 3-week course, and I had to find a subject. And I was going through all my photos from the last trip I was at, and I was thinking, what can I do? And this photo of these guys popped up right at the very end, and so I went back to find them, and I turned it from street photo of these people and how they were acting that day and for that 3 weeks, and I turned it into a documentary project. So wow. The two of them are quite linked. So, for example, in Thailand, I have a project I'm very close to finishing, and it's to do with the Muay Thai. That's been a very, very long-term, many years. But outside of doing that, because I'm always trying to photograph all the time, every day, something different, multiple things at a time, which is stupid. But anyway, that's how I like to do it. So I've done a whole thing, which is just a street project. But it's hard when you do some street stuff, you do some portrait stuff, you do some documentary stuff, you do some. Me, I like sports. I don't care. I like all kinds of things, and I don't want to be definitively labeled as one or the other. But the problem is, if you want to be considered as a serious documentary, for some reason they have this weird, stupid idea where they kind of look down on street as people that just go out and try and take one photo and don't know how to edit a sequence together. The street people can be real ideologues. So they can say, well, that's not street because blah, 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 blah. And I understand where they come from sometimes, but I also have this thing in the back of my head that think, who the fuck's this person to think that they're the gatekeeper of what photography is or isn't? But then it's not so bad, because when you hear them say it, they're usually telling you what aspect of photography they're not good at. Because if you hear someone and they'll say, I don't like this particular thing, I don't think that's street photography, you'll often find that they're not very good at that themselves. And so it's better to know. I'd rather people speak openly like that, even if they're indirectly telling you what they're not good at least you know where they stand. But I think we could be a lot more open-minded as a photography community to embrace all things and be more open to people, have a lot more discussion around what this genre is, what this genre isn't. Is it possible to do one genre and another genre and another genre, or do you have to be locked in to one type?
Definitely not. I don't. Why?
No,
I mean,
I don't think you need to.
Who's saying, like, you're not going out and taking photos for someone else? Like, if you want to do documentary and street, that's what you want to photograph. Like, why should you be beholden to what other people's expectations are of what the genre is or what you can and can't photograph? It baffles me that people actually have that opinion. Like, it's just, I don't know, just do what you want to do and don't worry about what everyone else is doing.
But there's always been ideologues in photography, because if you look back to when street and documentary were considered the same thing and everyone was doing both, which was Henri Cartier-Bresson. He was very adamant that no one was allowed to crop and they had to do this and they had to do that. And he'd have to look at their contact sheets to make sure they weren't cheating or something. So, but he's Henri Cartier-Bresson. He kind of gets a pass to be one of these gatekeepers of what photography is or not. But if you're Joe Bloggs from Manly, and I don't know anyone from Manly, I'm just going to say you're Joe Bloggs from Manly and you want to sit there and sit on your throne and tell everyone what they can and can't consider as this, that, and the other, mate, get a life.
Yeah.
You know, but that's the whole thing with doing street. It's so broad. It gives you an opportunity to photograph whatever you want. I think when we get into this, when we get into photography generally, often most of us fall into it. The more times we speak to people, everybody's fallen into this genre by pure fluke, myself included, other people that we've spoken to, and I'll use it as a creative outlet. It's to get away from my boring, mundane job and blah, 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 blah. I don't want to be, you're already restricted in your general life to certain parameters that, you know, blah, 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 boxed in, yeah? Expectations. When I go out with my camera, I don't want to have any rules attached to what I'm doing. And why should you? You know, like, there's already enough rules in life. I just don't understand why people are so opinionated and passionate about it. That's not this and that's not that. I tell them to get fucked.
It's okay to be opinionated and passionate about it. Yeah. But what we need to understand is that I can have one opinion, and my opinion means nothing. It's just my opinion, same as anyone else's. But we should be able to agree that we can both disagree and open up a discussion about it. I think as a society, it seems like we're losing the ability to stand up and say, well, no, I don't agree with that. But some people will just interject now before I've even finished a sentence, say, well, that's wrong, I don't agree with that. And you're like, what? They don't even tell you why. Or no, I disagree with that, so you're wrong. But for me, so shooting street, I can't shoot street around here where I live. I even find it very, very difficult in Newcastle. Not impossible, but I don't find it inspiring. I like a city that's populated and a little bit chaotic, because the kind of photos I'm looking for is something that I find interesting, and I can't find that a lot on a city that's quiet. It's just so. When I'm here, if I was going to shoot, it would only be documentary kind of things, or portraits, or sport. But you put me into a city that's populated and chaotic, mate, I'll take every opportunity that I'm not shooting something I'm already working on to just go and walk the streets and try and find some interesting scenes, or something like this. But yeah, I would just like people to be a little bit more open-minded and be more open to discussion about what is street and what's not, and try different things, because we can all have our own favorite kind of street. Because I specifically have my own favorite kind of photos that I'm looking for when I take street. But some days I'll push myself to do completely opposite kind of photos. When I was in Thailand with Renata last, I said to her, I think she looked at me, it could be funny because some of the photos I was taking, but I said, this is going to be a little bit different. Like when things are a bit slow, because I've got not a great attention span, and I end up drifting off and talking, and then I miss something that happens, because the stuff that I photograph, it comes real quick. You got to be quick, and if I'm not concentrating, I can't get it. And I was saying, well, when in the quiet moments, I'll consider someone more like Dado Moriyama. Mm-hmm. So he's walking around and he's photographing things, he's creative with people, but he's doing a lot of graffiti. He's doing a lot of urban with buildings and just streets, and he's looking. Not a lot of people know that he actually did a lot of shooting in the middle of the day. That was because he's shooting high contrast, so those shadows don't matter for him in black and white. And I'll do stuff like that with the intention that if I'm going to do an edit, whether it's a documentary edit, a street edit, whatever it is, you've got some kind of action photos, like something's a bit interesting or out there, or a face that's a bit crazy, and then I'll try something that's going to fit into that thing with the colors and the style or whatever it is, as a kind of like a break. When you're scrolling through Instagram and a photo of a cat comes up, it's that thing where it just rests your brain for a minute, because you can't just have crazy photo, this person doing that, pair of testicles here, like you can't have that kind of thing. You got to have that break. So
yeah, those quieter shots for sure, definitely.
And in taking those kind of photos, I actually think that I get better.
Yeah.
My all-round photography gets better because I'm putting myself outside of the kind of photography that I really love. And if I could only just take that, I'd be very, very happy.
Well, Dave, I want to take you back to something that you said a little while ago. And speaking of photography that you love, and you describe yourself as a gonzo journalist. So your project with the London Punks, you mentioned you stayed in a squat. I'll let you tell the story of how you came to win their trust. It's pretty extraordinary, if you don't mind telling it.
Mate, not at all. So this group that I was talking about before that I photographed, when I went back to find them 2 years later, I found them within 5 minutes. They were in the same spot. There was two of them that weren't there. The other three were. One of them had gone back to France and married a police officer. The other guy was in jail for, no need to really say, but he was in jail for something that's not very nice. And so I talked to them. I said, hey, do you guys remember me? And they remembered me because, think about how many people walk past and they don't remember them. But me, I'll always try to do my candid stuff first. And then I'll try and, if I find these people interested, then I'll go and approach them. Because sometimes your best photos will be in the candid stuff, and sometimes the best photos won't be in the candid stuff. So I try and gamble and do both. But anyway, so I went and talked to them. They said they remembered me. So I showed them the photo. I had it on my phone, and they loved it. So I had a chat with them, and went and bought them a couple of beers and kept talking to them. And but the whole time I'm photographing, I'm not one of these people that turns up and says, oh, wow, I turned up and I sat down with them for 5 hours. And I didn't even pick up my camera because I was building this. That's bullshit. If you need to do that, you shouldn't be there. You go there, you say, I'm a photographer. This is what I do. Do you mind? This is where the photo is going to be. This is my intention. This is the reason. This is my motivations behind photography. You'd be upfront and honest with people. And they respect that far more. And you actually build a rapport as you're photographing. You don't force it on them and then pick up your camera and they're like, oh, well, I thought you wanted to be my friend. Why do you now want to take my photo? But anyway, that's just something people have to learn themselves. But I was there, I was talking to them, and one of the girls said, listen, it's my birthday party tomorrow night. I said, do you want to come along to the thing? We'll have to ask everyone at the squat. We're in a new squat. I said, yeah, sure. But I actually talked my way into going back to their squat that very night. And they said, you want to be a bit careful. There's a kind of a guy there. He's a bit, I don't know. I don't think he's going to say yes. He does. I know he's not going to like you. He's been up for 4 days. He's tweaking. He's been on ketamine. He's been on speed. This guy, he's a bully. He beats people up. He might even beat you up. And I said, no, you let me worry about all that kind of stuff. So they took me back there. And sure enough, this guy heard this Aussie accent. He's come out and he's pouncing around. He's trying to play the big man, and he's carrying on. And, I showed him that I had no fear of this guy at all. I knew straight away what this guy was. He was a big bully, and they were all scared of him, the poor buggers. But he kept saying all this stupid stuff to me, and I was quite good in and respectful how I handled it. Eventually, he kept accusing me of being an undercover cop. And I'm going, mate, what do you mean? I said, I'm Australian. I said, have you seen an Australian police officer in London? And apparently they had. And I said, oh, well, I didn't know that. Like, it's possible. But I had my headphones in, like the old Apple, the ones you stick in your ear before, not the ones with the cord. And he goes, I think you're wired. And I said, wired? What the fuck would I be wired for? And I didn't know at the time, but this guy had a room full of stolen stuff. I actually got a pretty good price for a Polaroid camera, which he shoplifted from, the Pommy equivalent of General Pants. But anyway, I got that. But he had this whole room, so he had a valid reason not to worry about cops coming in. And I also didn't realise that. I didn't know all the rules about, if people can come in there, that they can take back over the place. And I didn't know any of that. I was quite naive at the time. And so he said to me, yeah, I think you're wired. And he says, show us. I said, what? I said, how the hell do you want me to show you that? And he says, get naked. But then I knew it. I had him. So I called his bluff. I said, okay. I said, man, you know what? I'm going to get naked right now in front of you and the other 25 punks and the 3-legged dog. I said, but if I do that for the next 3 weeks, you're going to let me take every fucking photo that I want. And so he said, yeah. He thought I was bluffing. Mate, I whipped my clothes off real fucking quick. And, mate, they thought it was the funniest thing they've ever seen. But with the squat, he was defeated, but he was quite happy. It was the first time he'd smiled, and But with the squat scene, it's a very rapey environment. It's very, very unsafe. And I only kept my clothes off for about 5 minutes because I was sick of guys coming up to me asking me if I've ever had a guy suck my dick, and are you sure you want to try it? And I'm like, mate, listen, if I haven't done it by this age, I'm not going to try now. especially one of the guys, he looked like he had the worst case of mouth herpes I've ever seen. And I thought that guy's got going anywhere near it. Anyway, so I put the clothes back on, but everything was okay. I was accepted, and for the next 3 weeks, I had a guy called Niall. And if you've ever seen my photo of the guy with the big feet on his head, and that's Niall, and he's my good mate, and he's a fantastic human being, and he's very, very smart. And he got to 23, and he was like, I don't know, he's a rocket scientist or something. And he's very, very socially awkward. But at 23, he started drinking, and then he never stopped after that. And he's in horrible problems for the moment. And it'll be interesting to see how he is when I go back. But so I'd have his phone number, and I would call him. He'd come down, he'd let me in. I'd go through, I'd photograph everything. I'd be in all these situations. At some point, the bully tried to kick me out a few times, but he never succeeded. He knew I was someone you don't bully. But even when I went away and I came back later in the year, they had a new. Funny enough, that where they were squatting that time, it was basically the version of Centrelink.
Really?
These guys, and so they got kicked out of there, and they ended up squatting abandoned doctor surgery. But for a little bit, they were in an abandoned police station. So they're indiscriminate. It's almost like a badge of honor to get these kind of places. One place we squatted was a bank vault. We had our own little bank vaults and stuff. But I went back to this other place, and I was going to move in, and this big bully Dave, before he went to jail, he battered this guy. His girlfriend ran off with some other bloke, and then he found him and beat the crap out of him with some brass knuckles, and he ended up in prison for 6 months. But before he did that, when he found out I was going to move in and Niall had given me this room, I came back, and there was like 20 bottles, like Coke bottles, big ones, small ones, bigger than I've ever seen, full of piss just everywhere. Like this guy was marking his territory. Yeah, and I just thought, you know what? I'm going to leave all my stuff here, and then I'm going to come back, and he's going to have pissed all over it. But there's some pretty, it's a pretty out there kind of place.
Yeah, and so what makes you want to go and do that though, Dave? Like, you're in there for 3-4 weeks, you're having to dodge piss. Some guys threaten to bash you. People want to fillet you, but you're doing that to get these photographs, and look, the project you did there was outstanding, and the work, kudos to you. You did an amazing job. But what makes you want to put yourself in that situation?
Well, mate, all the great things that happen to you in life will come from a position of somewhere between fear and discomfort. And people freak out when I say fear. But what I mean is people don't have a lot of courage to do things sometimes. So they don't have courage to be in a situation that makes them feel uncomfortable. They don't have the courage to be vulnerable and be naked in front of these rapey fuckers. And they certainly don't have the courage to fail. But failure is not the worst thing in the world. And it's this negative, people have this negative idea of it, but failure, it's not really a loss if you learn something from it. You just keep moving forward, you get better, you be stronger. So, mate, I just wanted to do something really good, and I knew that I had the opportunity because remember we were down in Ballarat and DuPont and Quilty did that talk.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Quilty said, and this is very important, and most people should realize this, that after photographers have been photographing for a certain number of years, everyone's really at the same level. Then it becomes about the person that puts themselves in the situation. Well, my talent isn't photography. There's a million better photographers than me, millions and millions better photographers than me. But what I'm better than other people at is building rapport with people very quickly, putting myself in situations that other people can't get in, and being able to photograph this. So when I was in this situation with the punks, I realized it's actually rare to get in this situation and rare for someone to photograph this. And when you do photograph things, you need to know who's done it before you. You need to know why am I suited to this rather than someone else, and who's done it before me, and have they done it so well, or is there something that I can add to this? And I went away and I had a look, because when I went back to the course, they gave me all these books on these photographers and said this, and they pointed me in this different direction. And no one had done it in the way that I photographed it. So you even had people that would go there and sit around with them for hours, and they would take these kind of portraity kind of photos and there's different kinds of squats, man. There's the ones where you're going to get stabbed. There's the ones where they party all night. There's the ones where they have raves and they rip all the copper off the thing. Then there's the ones where they're a bit better mental space, and they actually set it up and they have a beautiful little bedroom, and it's different. And so they go to those ones and they photograph these really sterile things, and they say this is an intimate look into the squatting community in London. And mate, it's really perfunctory kind of photography. It's just, there's no passion, there's no life. It doesn't really show what the place is like. So man, I felt a responsibility that when I got into this place to be the person that showed what this was like. And I knew that there was people in this environment that I got along with really well, and I could spend a lot of time. And again, they were as interested in me as I was in them, and that made it much easier for me. And so I decided to continue with it, and I'm still going with it. It's a long-term thing, and you commit to this, and it makes it easier because we have mobile phones and internet, and so it's much easier to keep in contact with people, even if you're not always getting good news, even if they're sending you messages because they've been kicked out of the house by their boyfriend and they need money so they can have somewhere to stay, and can they borrow money, and which is never going to get paid back. You've made a commitment to these people that you come into their life, and you're going to be a photographer. You're going to take something from them. Let's not pretend any kind of photography is exploitative. We all know what we do is exploitative. Everyone knows it. The people that are getting photographed, let's not pretend it's not happening. But you can at least make an effort to, if you're going to come into someone's life, you leave them in a better place than when you walked into their life. Mate, did I answer that question? I go on and on and on.
No,
boys.
no,
You
did. That's fine. You just
answer.
answered how you want to answer it, Dave. It's fine. But I want to ask you something about the sort of work that you do, Dave. Okay. Now, there's a photographer in America that did something very similar. It might have been Boogie, I think, who used to go into the projects, and he started off just shooting people out on the street gangs, and then they would start to introduce him back into homes, and he was in some really if you look at his photos, they're absolutely phenomenal. But my God, he's got gang members holding real life guns to his head and shit, and they were testing him to see how legit he was. And he said it was so intense that he couldn't do it anymore after a while, because being in those environments, you've explained how you're good at building rapport, but they're intense, they're pressure cooker situations to be in. Is it not difficult to deal with that sort of thing all of the time, Dave? How do you deal with it? Sorry,
mate, that's an excellent question, because I actually had a conversation with a photographer from down in Melbourne, Ross, and he's a massive fan of Boogie, maybe one of his biggest. And when we were in Thailand, we went away and we shot together for a bit. And I told him, I said, Boogie lost it. I said, Boogie gave up. Boogie, he just let out a book on Thailand, and I'll say, mate, for the access that guy had and of the photographer he is, he really let himself down. And I said, I think that he's one of these photographers, and this is what I fear very much, is that if you get to some level of success, you finally get to what you want to do, where you want to be considered a serious photographer who can do good work and has their own visual kind of signature of, where people can identify your work without it all looking the same. And I see these people, and this is where social media really shits me. So there's some very talented people in the street photography community, for example, and they get this level of fame very quick. And then all of a sudden they think they've made it. They realize they can keep doing, if I do this photo and just keep repeating it, then I can get this many likes, I can get this many comments, this many people will share my things, and everyone will tell me how wonderful I am. And they're very comfortable. And so they never, ever progress. And they never get better. And I don't understand that, because if you're going to do whatever you do in life, you should be trying to be better every day, and you should be trying to do it as best you can, because it's a fucking habit. I used to see it when I was playing footy. You'd see these guys come in and I'd watch them and I'd go, this fucker's pretty lazy. He's not even training hard. He's got all that physical gift in the world. If this guy actually did, put his heart into it, he'd probably be pretty good. And then you see him, they'd bring him into work and say, we're going to give him a work because he can't find work, and we're going to help. And then he's lazy at work. And then he's lazy. You find out that he was lazy at school. If you want to be lazy at one thing or not push yourself at one thing, you're going to be like that at everything. So not everyone can be the best photographer in the world. Not everyone can be the best artist or whatever you want to be. But what you can do is you can try to keep growing and keep getting better and keep being your own biggest critic. And don't be afraid if someone says, this is pretty good, but it's not as good as your old stuff. Maybe you want to go back in that direction and build on that rather than this new thing. What if you work on your composition? What if you take on board a mentor? What if you get someone else to do your editing because that's not your strength? Whatever it is, they should be going forward with that. But I was really hard on Boogie, and I remember Ross looking at me like I was an alien, because Boogie's a very good photographer. But I wasn't criticizing him as a photographer or a person. I just felt let down because I really like him. I like his work, and he's one of those guys that he put himself in that position. But it's mentally draining, and you need a certain personality. And so for me, when I lived in Sweden, years ago, as a rugby player, I could drink my whole wage for the week in one night. so I was going back to Italy to play rugby, and I thought, you know what? When we were back in Australia, when I was a young fella, they used to say to us, get off the booze. Every time you have a really big night out, it sets you back 6 weeks of your fitness. And I used to just think they were saying that because they didn't want us out chasing girls and getting into fights. But when I said, you know what, I'm going to stop drinking in Sweden. I'm going to train a little bit extra and see how I go. And mate, I've never been so fit. And not only that, after 3 months, I'd sent my mum home $16,000. And I thought, shit, this is how much money I'm spending on going out and drinking and chasing girls. What a waste of money. So then when I got to Italy, I thought, I feel so good. I'm going to keep going with this. I went about 9 months without drinking, and then that was the end of it. When I did drink, I had like a 5-day hangover, and I think it's not worth it. So I pretty much don't drink, but I only do it a couple of times a year, special occasions, mates' weddings, when I haven't seen someone for a long time, celebrating something, mates having a baby, whatever it is. And when I don't drink, I feel like I have these gifts. So some people where I go, this sounds like one of those things like on dating profiles where you say, my friends say I'm this, but I'm not making this up. People tell me that I'm the most patient man they've ever met. Well, that's okay. But as long as I haven't gone 12 hours without food, I haven't had only 3 hours sleep, or I'm not hungover, because as soon as I do that, I'm as impatient as anyone. So I have this patience. I've also learned very well that none of us in the world are perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. No, I've never met a perfect person yet. So I don't expect other people to be perfect. All I expect them to do is to try their best on that day. And that's something that's up and down, because your best today could be very different from next Wednesday when you all got the flu. It takes a certain personality, but even me, I thought I was bulletproof. And not last Christmas, the Christmas before, I'd done a stint in the UK. And so I was the two main characters, they were in this very abusive relationship, the most abusive relationship that I've ever seen. And I was in the middle of it all the time. So I'm actually physically jumping in and stopping them from bashing each other. I'm getting pulled on both sides emotionally. Then I've got Niall, nearly about to kill himself with the booze. Then I'm staying at this other squat where I can't sleep because downstairs is partying too much. Then these gangsters come in, which I had to throw one guy out, which was stupid because I couldn't sleep. Because then I realized I'm definitely not going to sleep. Then I saw they were sneaking a hammer down. They were going to attack me with a hammer when I slept, and so I had to move out of there. Then I had to actually go back and sleep on the couch of someone who tried to sexually assault me. Well, actually, had sexually assaulted me, but don't worry about that. Well, it's not a big deal. This is, like I said, this environment's very dangerous. And you know what?
Yeah.
Niall texted me the other day and he said, "Oh, one of your friends was here." I said, "What friend?" He says, "You know, the lady from LA." I said, "I don't know anyone in LA." He says, "Yeah, the one with the Leica." And it was, and basically we worked out who, like, I didn't know who it was, but they eventually, she'd sent someone a photo or something. Mate, this woman had no idea where she was going or where she was putting herself. She'd seen these photos that I've done and she thought she could go there and do this as well because I'll get this many likes and I'll get this many followers and wow, this is great. She's put herself in a lot of danger, man, because they know very well how much a liker is. They're very good thieves. That's how they make their money. So she put herself in a lot of danger. But people, to be like this, you've got to be. Life experience is a huge thing. You need to have all this life experience that you can call on. You need to have situational awareness. Like Boogie, he must have unbelievable situational awareness. You need to know when you're in trouble. Like they were trying to kill me once in Uganda. It was my second day in the country. I didn't even know the language then. But I knew what was happening because I had this situational awareness. I got out of it because I'm street smart. You've got to be perceptive. You've got to actually trust your instincts and know when you're in trouble or know when someone doesn't like you. You need to know when to shut up. You need to know how to read the room. You need to be resilient. You'll never get anywhere in photography if you don't have resilience. You need to have perseverance because people will often say no to you the first time. Now, you don't want to be an asshole and be one of these salespeople. People can only say no 13 times. You keep asking, and the 14th time they'll say yes. Don't be a dick. But I mean, be persistent if you've got this goal. Again, we said to have courage. Then you go into the things like you be kind and be considerate to people. That's free. It's easy. It's not hard. It's actually harder to be an asshole. Have humility as well. A dose of humility. Don't be precious. Drop your fucking ego. And then it helps if at the end of the day you're introspective because you go home and you think everything through. But I can tell you, I would say Boogie, fantastic photographer. He has the most of that. And I hope it's just the fact that he's got older and he feels like it's taken too much from him and he stopped taking his photos like that. I hope he hasn't got complacent and happy to get really good because he goes from doing street photography where you get nothing. It's all this expense to travel around the world. You're losing more money than you make. And now he's shooting, advertising campaigns for Nike and stuff. I hope he's not just sitting there with his newfound money with his feet up going, well, I've done all that before. Because you know what? The world only has a certain amount of boogies. Yeah. You'll have the people that come in and they'll try and copy him, but they're only the second best boogie.
Well, it's true.
Dave,
there'll always be someone that... Oh, go on, Mark. Go on. No, I was going to say there's always going to be someone that's going to come through. There's always going to be someone that's going to come through. You always think there's the best soccer player in the world, and then there's always a new player that comes through eventually. You know what I mean? So maybe there might be another new Boogie. There might be another, Henri Cartier-Bresson. There might be another Martin Parr. There might be another Mark Davidson. There might be another Dave Cossini. You know what I mean?
And look,
go on, Mark. What are you going to say?
No, well, just speaking of not resting on your laurels and always pushing yourself forward, and I don't know if you want to say this publicly, Dave, and we can cut this out if you want, but I've spoken to you in the past, and I think you've got something like 18 projects on the go. So speaking of, tenacity and resilience and just the passion and the drive for this medium is just extraordinary. And so you did the London Punk project, and I don't know exactly the timeline. You can fill us in, but you're a finalist in last year's National Photographic Portrait Prize. You photographed a Ugandan man named Godfrey Baguma. So tell us about that and how you connected with him. And you mentioned briefly before that you almost got assaulted or possibly murdered in Uganda. And so how did, that all come about as well?
Well, mate, there's multiple times of being robbed or assaulted or thing in Uganda. But at the end of the day, Ugandan people are very good. And one of them told me afterwards, he said, listen, no one really wants to go and physically attack someone, especially as big as you. he said, but the thing is, we haven't eaten for 4 days. We don't know when we're going to eat next. We're desperate. Yeah. So I took them and fed them. Now I'm friends with them. I go back every time. I photograph them. I take their photos back. Another time, I had these 5 guys jump out in front of me, and this is a funny thing. I just about got okay. So the story where I nearly got killed, where they wanted to kill me, I went into this place called Cossini. And if you talk to all the locals, this slum, they have 70 slums in the capital, but this one's the one the locals go, you should never go there, you should never do this. Of course, that's like a red rag to a bull to me. So I went in there, and mate, I knew straight away. It was Friday afternoon. Like I said, a lot of people hadn't eaten. There was the people, their drugs had started to wear off. They sniffed jet fuel, and they took me I went there with this former boxer called Obi twice, and he was kind of respected because he was quite a good boxer, but he was pretty rough, and he took me right into the middle of this thing. I've never been anywhere like this, mate. And so one of the things is when you're in a situation like this, it's very, very important you never ever show any kind of fear. Bullies, people that try and take advantage of you, they're looking for a sign of weakness. If you show this sign of weakness, you're fucked. So I was actually starting to get pretty scared when I realized what was going on. But 30% of the people that were there, because I was really big and in shape at the time, but I had 2 cameras hanging off the side of me. I had about $30,000 worth of camera gear. Stupid. And I've been doing this kind of thing for a long time, traveling, so I should have known better, but you'll always make mistakes. You just got to learn from them. So I had these expensive cameras, and I realized all these people were trying to go around and get a group together to bash me and rob me, and I remember thinking to myself, geez, I've even got Calvin Klein undies on. I reckon I'll even take them, and my mum's gonna get my body and I'm gonna have nothing on. I'm thinking, oh fuck, poor mum. But anyway, I noticed that someone wanted to get their photos taken. So what I'd do is I would go and I'd take their photos up against the wall, and they go, uncle, and they're grabbing me, and they said, my photo. And I said, oh yeah, but I've taken one here. We need to go 10 meters that way, and I'll take you in front of this hut. And I kept doing that until I got out on the main road. Geez, by the time I got on the main road, they realized everything was, I was gone. I was nearly away. So I said, listen, relax. I'll be back. I'll bring you your photos. I'll be back tomorrow. I said, are you sure you'll be back tomorrow? Anyway, they let me go. And I thought, fucking Jesus, thank God. Anyway, I went back 3 days later, but I just took my Ricoh GR 2 at the time I had, and they saw me with that, and they were like, I'm not going to fucking wrestle this guy. Look at the size of him for that shitty little camera. They didn't realize it's a cult camera. And then I took their photos back, and that was it. I was in, and then I always would go with locals, and I become friends with a guy called Juma who would eat glass for tourists. In the end, he kept wanting to eat glass every time I saw him. I said, mate, stop that. I don't want you to do it. But on the way home that first night, I was walking through this market, or Quinio market, and these 5 guys jumped out. And the Ugandan guys, the East African guys, you can get some big ones, but majority of them are quite small and skinny. So I'm bigger than them. Whereas you go to West Africa and those Nigerian boys, mate, they're big boys. But yeah, so they jumped out, and there was 5 guys, and they were smaller than me. And there was a tough guy at the front, and he's gone, Mazungu. He said, you give me the cameras. And I said, what? And he goes, Mazungu, you give me the cameras. And I said, what? These cameras? And I kind of picked them up. And he goes, yeah, you give me the cameras, Mazungu. And I said, oh, no, these are for the big boys. I said, you go away and grow some muscles, then I'll give you these cameras. And his 4 mates just started pissing themselves. And then he lost all of his confidence. And now this guy's name was Musa, and he sells clothes a bit further up near the taxi park. And I go back and I see him, and I say hello to him. We fist bump and we take photos. I give him more photos. And so it's a lot of it is how you deal. It's actually a lot of it's like life. Life throws you a lot of curveballs, man, but it's how you deal with it. So this kind of situation. But as far as, sorry, man, I'm going on and on. You know, this is your fault, Mark. You know I can talk, man.
No, go on.
I don't know if did he warn you, John? With Godfrey. So when I was in Uganda, I was in love with the place within the first week. This chaos. I was out there. I was pumping the streets. I was here. I was there. I was everywhere. I'm going, there was just too much to photograph. And it was so much sensory overload, but it was so difficult because, man, there's people I know and I photograph with, and if they went and did that, oh, Mark, if you thought you'd go there and flash people in the face, you'd end up being sent back in a cardboard box, and they'd be onto you straight away, mate. You can't do it. So so your whole technique, it has to be away, and the way you deal with people. There's no way you can't interact because you're the only white person in the street. And every photo I've got, I can see 3 people staring at me with this real evil eye. But doesn't mean they hate me, but they're watching me. These people are watching me. I even remember one time I was just standing there by myself, and by this time I was smart enough to only take 1 camera out. And these photo drivers there, which is the biggest kind of Moyai gangster kind of guys, and they're going, "Oh, you're pretty brave being there with that out here." And I said, "What?" I said, "Who's going to take this off me?" And then I thought, yeah. Anyway, that worked. I bluffed them, and they didn't know what to say at that. Anyway, I moved about 1 meter to my right, and I got my foot stuck in some drain and I fallen over. These people came running from everywhere, but I managed to get up real quick and they kind of went everywhere. This guy said to me, he goes, and I said, who's going to take this from me? He said, oh, they'll grab it and they'll run. I said, I said, but dude, I'm very fast. I don't think you guys can outrun me. And, but you've got to, that's the way you've got to do it. You've got to measure the situation, because there's some situations where you need to shut up and move and go somewhere else. I've had guns pulled on me. I've had to jump out of a 3-story window in Thailand. I've had I've had multiple people try and take my head off with a machete. I've spent a night in jail in Amsterdam.
Jesus.
Look, you don't take the kind of photos I take if you, sit on the couch on a Friday night.
Yeah.
There's a reason I take the photos I do. Like, if I had to go and just do less exciting kind of photography, if I was just in a studio doing studio portraits every day, it'd drive me nuts. I wouldn't love photography.
It sounds like you've got an addiction to adrenaline, Dave. You're like the. You've got this addiction to getting a buzz from it. It's not just the photos. It's almost like the photos, the end product. It's the
photos are an excuse. They're an excuse, mate. If it wasn't for photography, my life would be like everyone else's. It'd be boring. But through photography, I get to have this very exciting life. But if you look back to that and you always ask yourself questions, why? What drives me? What made me like this? Mate, I was 5 years old, and you wouldn't have been here probably, John, but they used to have this TV show called Wide World of Sports. They had this famous Australian guy called Maxie Walker. They were on it, and they used to, every Sunday, they'd have these weird things from around the world. These the Palo di Siena in Italy, where they're racing with this horse race. And I saw this thing where these bulls were chasing people in the street. And I thought, at 5 years of age, I said, you know what? I'm going to do that. My mum said, don't be silly. Anyway. Mate, I've done it 24 times. I love it. It's an absolute rush. When I was younger and I was more crazy and I wasn't aware that I could, my body could break or bad things could happen to me. I used to think I was bulletproof, and I'd put myself into situations where, mate, I don't know how I got out of it sometimes. So yes, the photography is a way to relive this sense of excitement, and that's why my photographs look like they do. And you know what? The best photos I probably take, or a lot of the good ones that I take, what I think are good, I can't even put them on Instagram because Instagram's too prudish. Because I'm very fortunate that I can gain people's trust fairly quickly, and they do things in front of my camera that they probably wouldn't do normally. So, but with that too is also a responsibility. If I was able to put that on Instagram, it doesn't mean that I would, because you shoot and you photograph everything, and then so for me, I'm very much into I don't overthink when I shoot. I shoot on gut instinct and feeling, and then I use my brain in the editing and the sequencing and decide what I'm going to show and where later.
But Dave,
but that's a huge skill to have, though, Dave, isn't it? Because when you're in those situations, people are always guarded because you're a stranger. Yeah, you have to gain their trust. But as soon as you do, and people drop their guard, and that goes for anything in life, you see a different person. So, and once they drop their guard, it makes it easier for you to be able to photograph what's really happening. But I think it's also important for people to remember as well, when we look at these amazing photographs that we see, photographers that we all aspire to, it's important to remember that you have to look at what they do and how they do it, and what they have to give up and the risks they take to achieve that. If you don't take those risks, you won't get those photos. And people need to remember that. You can't get it from a distance. You have to put yourself in the fray. You have to take, like you said before, you have to take yourself out of your comfort zone. And you have to put yourself, not necessarily in the, I'm not going anywhere with you, Dave, because I'll be dead. But my head will be on a pike somewhere, and I go, oh, that's John St. He didn't last too long in Uganda.
You're a bloody argumentative northern Englishman, and you'd be like, what are you going to do if you try to headbutt him? That's what would get us killed. If you just play along with me, we'd be okay.
I'm the same as
you.
I'm the same as you, Dave. I don't show fear. Sometimes I'm pooping myself when I'm in situations. But I've learnt being in the Northeast that you can't show fear. Because if you show fear, you're going to get a hiding. You might get a hiding anyway, but there's less chance you're gonna get a hiding if you don't look frightened. Do you know what I mean? That's what I've learned.
It's even something like even outside of photography, if we're walking on the street late at night, because for us men, it's a big danger for us to walk at night. People don't realize it because what you hear about in the media is that women should be safe in that, but we're 20 times more likely to be attacked. That's a pretty strong statistic. So we actually have to consider this kind of thing. But when you have this guy and he's coming up and he's talking to you and he's being smart ass and he's saying this and he's doing that, this is a coward. What he's doing, he's measuring you all he wants to see is some kind of fear, and then he'll attack you. If you handle that in the right way, don't show any fear, you won't have any problems, because that's a coward.
Bullies normally are, mate.
Oh, mate, every time. That's why I wasn't too worried with that big Dave from the squat. I knew this kind of guy, and I knew that he was more scared of me than I was of him. And, the thing with life experience, like I know very well physically what I can do. I've been in a lot of fights when I was a young guy. So I know, and I have that confidence of testing myself. So yeah, like I know when I should run or when I should stand my ground. Like there's no shame in running, mate. There's no shame in winning a fight by 100 meters,
Yeah.
But Dave, the question was, how did you meet Godfrey?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, mate. Yeah, you know what? You should have put a warning in. You should have put a warning in the intro to say that I can ramble on and talk and go on some kind of tangent.
No, I love it. I love it,
mate. But every time I've stopped talking, I've made myself stop talking. I could keep going, but okay. So when I was in Uganda, I saw this country that I fell in love with. I thought it was so wonderful. They were having all these weird things that I just never seen anywhere else. And in Uganda, anything is possible. And I thought so I started doing my own research. And I found out they would, like, for example, they were having imagine having this in Australia, Jesus, but they were having a Miss Fat Ass, a Miss Kabina Kanini competition, which is because over there, the women are blessed with very large behinds. And it's considered a very attractive quality in the women over there. Mm-hmm. And, I can't deny. I think it's very attractive. But they were having this competition, and the Minister for Tourism was saying, we're going to bring all tourists from all over Africa. They're going to come here and they're going to look at our big ass women. And I'm just thinking, this is crazy. Like, what other stuff do they have here? And then I found, like a twins festival. I found a goat racing competition thing. They have as a royal ascot of goats. And then I found this story about the world's ugliest man. I thought, geez, that's a bit harsh. Like, I mean, I don't know how many people want to be called the world's ugliest man. But then I really looked into the story behind it. And I thought, you know what? It's not even just the visual aspect of it. Because if you look at someone like him and the only thing you're thinking about is, oh, geez, that'll make a good photo, you're a pretty brutal person. So there's a lot of people in this world that look interesting, but you shouldn't photograph them because there'll be some reason. For example, if his story was really sad, or if he'd done some kind of crime, so you had to look into his background and all this stuff, make sure he's a good man. But the guy that I originally had as a fixer, and for anyone who's traveling overseas to countries where not everyone speaks the language, so in Uganda their English is actually pretty good, but it's usually the people that have been to school. So if they haven't been to school, or you go into the very rough or the slum areas, you'll find a lot of people can't speak English. So my advice to you is to learn how to find a fixer and a local person, usually someone that's speaking at least those two languages pretty well. Sometimes someone who has some skills. So the girl my main fixer, she's also a travel guide. She's got a lot of skills. She's fantastic, and I owe a lot of what I do in Uganda. I've got two fixers. I've got her. I've got Mr. George. I've got a driver. So I could just take the driver, but I really liked other people's company. Everyone comes in handy for something. So, but when I was originally there, I had one of these Moyai, these gangsters from the Cossini slum, and this guy was just robbing me. But I needed him, and I knew what he was doing, and so realistically, the money wasn't a lot for me at the time, and I was paying that. But then, in order to go to see Mr. Ugly, the village that he's living in, so we had to catch this bus for like 4 hours where you jam-packed like this. And we had to take this girl because she was coming from the local area and she was speaking that local language. Mr. George, he was speaking Swahili. So Godfrey speaks Swahili as well. His English is so he understands it very well, but I think he doesn't have the He's not confident to speak English. So, because he was finishing school at 10, because they sent him out to become a cobbler, to fix shoes, because that's the only job you can get if you've got a disability there. It's the most horrible country in the world to have a disability. They treat you horribly. You're pigeonholed to what kind of job you can do. Sometimes your family will send you away because they think you're cursed and bad luck, because the traditional side of it. So anyway, we took this bus 4 hours, and this is the only time that I didn't just start taking photos straight away. I wanted to sit down, and I wanted her to explain to him very clearly who I am, what I do, what my expectations out of it, how does he feel about me, how does he feel about what I want to do, what happens if when I do it, it has this reaction, it has that reaction, what if I'm aiming for this and it only gets to here. We agreed on everything. It took about 2.5 hours. I wanted to hear his story, and I wanted to try and gauge whether I liked him, and if I could feel like he was a good person. I wanted to see what his family was like, and I got nothing but good feelings. And funnily enough, we videoed him the last time I was there, and one of the questions I asked him was, did you ever think you'd see me again? And he said no. He thought I was just going to come along and use him like everyone else. And he gets and this is why I needed to know all about this. And I don't want to go into my relationship with Godfrey. All I can say is that it's mutually beneficial. Mm-hmm. There's a long history of something called white savior complex. And I also think if you're going to do good things for people, you don't do it for the pat on the back or to say, look what a wonderful person I am. So no one needs to know everything, but Godfrey, mate, when it's my birthday, that fixer, she catches that bus 4 hours. She goes down there. He sings me happy birthday. They send me video messages. It's the best birthday present I've ever got. It's fantastic, But yeah, so we established this relationship and we started, and that's where it started, and it just kept going. And it's been five years. This time when I go to see him, I'm taking one of my good friends, Parv, who's helped me with the filming of my dad's stuff. So it's costing me a fortune. I'm taking him with me, but we're going to also film a video on Godfrey's life, because sometimes you got to look at a story, or if you're going to tell a story, and is it better as a photo by itself, photo and writing? Is it better just as writing? Is it better as a short film, series, whatever it is? And I think to really show, I'm very happy with where the photo project's at. I think it's very strong, and it's getting stronger every time. And I'm not far off finishing that, but I'd really like to honor him with a movie. And I've also got a motivation to try to do really well for him and his family. I feel a big responsibility.
So just touching on what you've said there about the sorts of people that you photograph, people would say, well, Dave's just exploiting those people. You know what I mean? For his own benefit. And you've just mentioned about this gentleman in Uganda that you didn't want to go into too much detail about your relationship, etc. Because, but how do you, and we love tall poppies in Australia, mate. How do you handle the criticism in potentially touching on subjects that some of us in the community, in street community, may find somewhat offensive or no-go
or taboo,
or exploitative, or whatever negative connotation you want to put on it? How do you deal with that, Dave?
Well, mate, I do have some strong opinions about this, because part of the thing of asking yourself questions about, did I handle this situation okay? Is this the best way forward? Have I explained this thing well enough to this person? Am I doing the right thing? Which photos do I show? Which ones do I leave out? The ones you leave out are just as important half the time. But a lot of people throw around this word exploitation, and for me, it's fucking offensive. It's when it first happened to me, I was very fucking angry, because for me it was the same as if you called me a racist or a pedophile, and I'm not. So people have accused me of exploiting my dad in that project. But what I'll tell you is, the first thing I know is this person's never been in this situation, because the only person getting exploited is the photographer. They still exploit me to this day, but that's a responsibility that I knew. I knew what was going to happen, and I took that on. I said, this is the collateral damage of doing a project like this, that, I owe these people as much as they owe me. So that's part of the relationship. With Godfrey, it's very sensitive because, obviously he's coming from a third world country. We've got different skin types. People will always have an idea about you, but I don't mind people. I'd prefer people share this idea and call me exploitative to my face and this kind of thing, because it tells me more about them than it does about the subject, because most people think everyone's like them. So when someone's accusing you of being exploitative, it's because that's what they would do in the same situation. So it gives you a real indication of what kind of person they are. Think about it. If your wife comes home one day and she starts accusing you of cheating on her, like when you haven't done it, it's usually an indication that she's doing it to you. So think of it the same way. We live in a world where people tell you look left and you should be looking right. So especially with social media, they give this idea of who they are on one hand when they're really someone else. So I don't mind people making these things and saying this. What I don't like is the gatekeepers of photography. These people need to do better. Someone who's small-minded, judgmental, they don't like themselves, I don't care. They can call me exploitative. It's water off my duck's back, because I've looked into this in way greater detail than they ever will. And I knew that if this was as good a project as I can make it, and I had confidence in myself, I knew that I'd have to answer these questions. So I really went away and I thought about this, and I read a few books, and I decided, is this something you want to do? And I moved forward with it, and I moved forward with all of his permission and information and these conversations we had, even if they're mostly translated. So I feel very good about that. But the gatekeepers, there's people in photography, anyone who has this position of power that decides who gets to show what photos and whatever, these motherfuckers will use and say, oh, that's exploitative. We can't show that. That's very exploitative. But they use it simply because they don't want to show the photo. They don't have the balls to say, you know what? We don't want to see Leo and Glenn drunk in our newspaper, even if it's a good story, or if it has. Well, for starters, no one has sympathy for those guys because they're middle-aged white guys. They're not the popular thing at the moment. The fact that people would knock back publishing photos of the people that I take, I mean, I'm not an idiot. Like, I knew straight away, well, okay, if I wanted to get published and I want to get more adoration and success, and I don't know, however you measure these fucking things, more trophies, more pats on the back, whatever the fuck, it's not what I take photographs for. But if you go back to why I take photographs, and this is a question everyone should be asking themselves, why do I take photographs? Why do I take photographs of the things that I take photographs? What's driving me for my motivation? And the big one, and this is a good one to put on people on the spot, because they've usually never thought about, why do I show them where I show them? But I was taking all these photos. I've got a very big archive of photos I've been taking for a lot of years. I'd never shown anything. But what happened was the people said to me, well, where are they going? Why don't you show our photos? Where are you putting our photos? How come you don't do a book? Why aren't our photos here? And I started getting this pressure, and I thought, shit, it's very selfish to take these photos and keep them to myself, especially when these people really want to see their photos somewhere and they want to see a finished product. They think they're going to be in National Geographic, and I'm like, oh shit, I've got no idea. They would never put my photos in there. Anyway, so then I felt this pressure, and I thought, okay, so now I need to show these photos. But see, the thing is, before I show the photos, I don't have to take that responsibility and say, well, you know what, once I release the photos, I have no control over it. I can't control that bigoted idiot making horrible comments. I can't have people making judgments and this kind of thing. So I also was selfishness of not being able to handle that. So I let go of all of that and I put it out there. But then I found this resistance. Like I said, photo editors that refused to even email me back. I would enter photos into competitions. There's some photos, and taste is subjective and judges are judges, and you got to respect that if you think all your photos are good and should win something, you're a fucking idiot. But there's photos that on another given day should have had some kind of recognition and they didn't get it. But they're using this thing and saying, well, no, you're exploitative. And I'm going, well, hang on a minute, I've had these conversations with it's very fucking judgmental to accuse me of being exploitative. And have you asked these people? I'll give you their phone number. You can talk to them and they can tell you all about it. There's things that I do for people that I photograph that I can't say out loud. Just on something like this, I can tell my mates. If I've ever told you this kind of thing in person, I consider you a good friend, because they won't judge you for it. But you don't do good things for people and expect to get a pat on the back or to progress your social standing. What about those people that go on social media and say, well, here we go, here's a homeless person in Sydney, and I've bought him a tube of toothpaste and a sandwich, aren't I a fucking good person? No, a good person doesn't fucking post that and humiliate the person. You know what I mean? A good person does that in silence. Be a good person. It's not fucking hard. You don't do things for other people to get a pat on the back.
That's true.
But yeah.
Do you think, Dave, that a lot of these gatekeepers and competitions and all those other things, it's largely because they feel the pressure from society to sanitize everything? Like, it's almost like if we don't show it, it doesn't exist.
Mate, it's a valid
And when
question.
someone like yourself goes out there and photographs it and puts it out there and shows it that these things are happening, these things do exist, this is what is in our society, because we like to paint this wonderful picture that everything's perfect. It's not. And when you come up and you show people that, it breaks this perfect painting that we've been, a narrative, shall we say, that they've been pushing. Do you think it could be some of that as well, Dave? Because you can get cancelled on things so easily these days.
Yeah, but it's a very valid point. And I'm not going to say that it's not that, or that's not something that contributes to it. But if you look at these people that take the positions of, if you look at all the photo editors in Australia, they're all failed photographers. They're medium talent kind of people. And is that really the people we should be having running these things? Because they seem to have this kind of bitter attitude towards certain people. But look at, I'm very proud. Like I don't really go in the photo competitions to win awards. What I try to do is go in to get to finals so that the people that I photograph can see their photos somewhere. They get a pleasure out of having their photo hung up somewhere. Yep. I always say that the real winning is making the finals, because the best photo very rarely wins. And I'm not even going to change that because I've won a couple. There's been ones that I've won and I'm sure someone else should have won, but it evens itself out because there's other ones that I probably should have won that I didn't. But the thing I'm proud of last year is getting I had a couple of wins, but there was two of them I'm very proud of, because when you get to that higher level, there's a lot of nepotism involved in these competitions, and you find friends, choosing friends, which is, it's a bit bullshit, and it's hard too, because if you complain about this, you look like you're bitter because you didn't win. But mate, like I said, winning means nothing. It's nice to get the prize money on a competition that has a nice prize money, but for me, that for reasons I can't say, that prize money means nothing to me. It's important in one way, but it doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't go in my pocket. But it's hard because I remember I had a photographer that I know that I respect very much, and they rang me up when the prize was awarded. They were livid at that fucking photo that they chose. And they said, at least they've got their entry for next year. Their entry next year was going to be a shit on top of a printed out photo of the one that won it. And they're going to write a conceptual statement for it. And I said, mate, I thought that was hilarious. I lost it. And, but I understand the person. No, but I understand the person's frustration.
Yes.
For people, there was another one I was in, and no, I don't. Look, fuck it, they're not going to listen to this. They think they're too good for it, for this shit. But there was two of them that I was in, substantial amount of prize money. They're fucking best mates at judging. Like, fuck, what chance have you got? And so people come up and they do the criticism and that. So I very much like when people win something that when they don't know the judges. So HeadOn is the reason HeadOn is considered a good one to win is because they get all these judges from all over the world. So the majority of those judges that saw the photo of Godfrey, they'd never seen it before because I hadn't really published anywhere. They'd never seen it. So it was the first time they saw it and they chose it. They didn't know who the fuck I was. So I don't know, how does that change? Because it's an incestuous little group of photographers, and you've got these people that put themselves in positions as gatekeepers. And but I noticed that is Australian Photography or something like that? They had a competition last year. Did you won something at it, Mark? What was that? What was that competition?
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago. Australian Photography. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah,
he's won a few, Dave. You know what he's like.
Yeah, no, but I think this is good because I think there's not enough.
Oh, sorry, I didn't win. I I was
Oh, didn't you?
Yeah.
You got something. Okay. Yeah. But I think this is good because I think there's not enough of these kind of genuine competitions for Australian street photographers. But I don't even know, because how do you choose judges that aren't friends with people that are in it? because it's Australia. Like everyone, when you're at a certain level, you kind of know someone or another. So it makes it very hard in that way. But I would actually like to see some more genuine, not these photo competitions, which is a bullshit, a money grab, where the people charge a big amount of money and then give $500 to the winner and $250 to the thing, and they've made $40,000 profit. Not one of these kind of competitions, but like genuine things. And yeah, but I'd like to see the street photographers do it so that a few of them get a bit more of a push to, instead of just publishing their stuff on Instagram and hoping it gets shared somewhere else, that they get into that habit of trying to edit a sequence of 10, 15 or 20. 10 is probably a good number for street photography because they don't tend to go together on a particular subject. It's usually they're linked by color,
location.
You know, locate. Oh, it doesn't even have to be location. Let's look at if you took, say, Anders Peterson. I know he's not always considered a street photographer, but if you look at his photo books, the city diaries, they're pretty much street photography. He just goes to cities all around the world and he just walks around the street. He meets people, takes their photo, and then he jumbles it all together into doesn't matter. It can be a photo from Stockholm, a photo from Shanghai, a photo from New York, and he puts it all together. But yeah, because you do see street photographers and they put together two photos, which is just really cheesy. Oh, this is a ball, that's a ball, or this is a red thing and that's a red thing. And I think, no, but the edit, there's a lot of photographers in Australia, and I think they're good, and I think their photos are good. They just need to work on their sequencing or their editing. And you can't say this to people because you don't know them well enough. You don't know if they're going to take it as someone who wants to see them do better, or they think you're someone that's mansplaining to them, whether that's a guy mansplaining to another guy or whatever. So you don't know what to say, but it's, if you look at the better photographers, they're really good at the sequencing and the editing, and they spend a bit of time on this, and that's how they learn. And the more time you're sitting with your photos, the better you're going to get, because you understand what works, what doesn't work. So it's even, I don't know how it works. I don't have the time or the to do anything like this and to start anything like that, or I can't afford to either. But maybe that's why you find all the failed photographers are doing this kind of thing. I don't know.
Well, Dave, look, on that note, we could honestly talk to you for another 3 hours, to be honest. We've
Easily.
Mate, we barely scratched the thing.
I know.
I've gone up five different rants, and that's about it.
But look, this question's probably even useless, isn't it, John, to ask you, Dave? Because you've got a few things booked.
No, mate, you asked this. I've been waiting all week.
All
for
right,
this.
He's prepared an answer. Here we go, Dave.
Adelaide.
There we go. I didn't even ask the question. Adelaide.
Really?
Adelaide, mate.
Adelaide.
It's the best city for photography. No. I've been waiting for that, but. No, I listened to the podcast, so I know what the question is. If you could go shoot anywhere tomorrow, where would you shoot?
And why? Yes, correct.
Mate, for me, it actually is a hard question because there's a list of places I want to go.
You got one though, Dave. Just one. Oh,
I've got to go through it.
One, Dave.
Rio, Las Vegas, New Orleans, Miami,
Rio.
Tijuana, Santo Domingo, Mumbai, Shanghai, but Dakar, Senegal, Freetown, Sierra Leone. But I'm going to settle it to two.
Okay.
Beirut, Lebanon, and Havana, Cuba. And Havana, Cuba wins it every time.
You never been?
Never. But I just look at the place and I love the music. I love the feel to those kind of places. I love all the color. I love the beautiful women. I love the food. And this place is unspoilt for the moment because they've kept that American capitalist influence out of it. So I think there's something there. And I've also, one of my best mates has been there, and he told me this story about how they went to buy these underground cigars in these kind of places. And I'm thinking, I want to go and do all this kind of thing and photograph it. But basically over there, I didn't know, but the locals have to get a license. So if you're outside of a bar or a restaurant or something, they actually have to get a special license to even talk to a foreigner on the street.
What?
Wow.
Yeah, because otherwise it's to stop anyone from crime and stuff. So you can walk around with all your valuable stuff. You're never going to get robbed. It's the safest city in the world for a foreigner. And I mean, it's just fantastic. I just, everything about it, I just think I can take good photos. I think I can enjoy myself. And that's what it's all about, I guess. Just finding somewhere where you can take good photos. You can enjoy yourself. The people are friendly. The music's good. The food's good.
And I hear the squats are good as well. So, yeah.
I don't even know if they have squats in Cuba, but mate, if they do, I think it'd be very interesting.
You're there, yeah.
Have you guys seen a street photographer, a street documentary? His name's Raul Canabana. He's a mate. The first time I ever went to go see Stephen DuPont, he showed me this book by this guy, and he said, "Here, have a look at this." And I flicked through it, and I thought, this guy's great. He's a Cuban photographer, Raul, Raul. Canabana, Canban, with the little dash over the top of it. Oh, but look him up. He's fantastic, and no one knows him.
I'm going to look him up. Fantastic.
I will. So Dave, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. And if anybody's interested in going to Cuba with Dave, he'll be running a photo workshop there to pay for it all. There's only 10 spots available, so you better get in quick. And wear your knife-proof and bulletproof vest.
Yeah, pretty much.
you won't be taking pictures of pretty cars.
Well, mate, no. Actually, Cuba's probably the only place they can get away without the stab vest.
You probably can. You just said it's pretty safe. Well, It was an absolute pleasure having you on, and thanks for sharing your stories and your opinion, Dave. It's been fantastic talking to you.
No, thanks for inviting me, gentlemen. It's been fun.
Thanks, Dave.